There's a maid jiggling near a door. A teenager has the best time of his life with multiple women, and there's even some spanking. This is Jace with Popcorn Recap. Roger is a young teen who has recently gone through hormones, and Ursula, a maid, is pleasantly surprised by the changes his body has gone through. His mom greets him as he arrives home, and his Aunt Marguerite gets on her knees to clean the dirt on his pants. Later, Roger and his sister Bertha are playing in the fields, and they bump into Mrs. Muller. Without any shame at all, she decides to pee in front of him. Roger accidentally stumbles on people having fun out in the woods. The woman notices him, so Roger runs away in embarrassment. When they're having dinner, Roger notices the maid Helene smiling at him. The mom tells Kate to bring Bertha to bed. Soon after, Roger is ready for bed. Roger hears a noise coming from the halls and notices the maid being highly sus. Roger observes intently as the maid and man finish off. The maid shakes it off as if nothing happened. Roger's little sister scares him and asks if she can sleep on the bed with him. Bertha asks him if he thinks Aunt Marguerite is beautiful. He does. Roger soon gets a pyramid after thinking about the maid. Bertha notices it and tells him she knows all about it already since Kate told her. Kate barges in and tells Bertha to sleep on her own bed. Kate uncovers Roger's blankets and finds a large pyramid. She stumbles on top of him and then composes herself. As she leaves, Roger is fully embarrassed. The next day, Bertha and Roger are hanging outside, and a bunch of the women hang out and talk about men nearby. Men walk by and start to heckle the women as they go number one. Ursula flashes the men her behind, and Roger is mesmerized and shocked by it. Roger's dad arrives with Elisa, Roger's sister. Before lunch, Dad talks about his business of selling medals for war troops. However, it's not doing well since there isn't a war going on right now. Later on, Roger gets caught peeking looking under women's dresses. Then his sister takes him to the confessional where she hears the juiciest gossip. Bertha leaves him. Aunt Marguerite walks in to confess her sins with the men on the farm. Then says she's also been lusting over a child, her own nephew. Roger is intrigued as she professes her want to touch him. She goes on and then realizes the priest has fallen asleep. As Roger inches closer and closer to hear, the ground under him collapses, and Aunt Marguerite is in shock. Later that day, in a room filled with people, Roger takes off his pants. Roland, Elisa's boyfriend, has arrived to witness the spanking of Roger. The farmhand gives a bunch of nettles and removes Roger's Mormon undies. His aunt spanks him 10 times while everyone watches. At night, the maid gets an unexpected roughhousing in the hallway while Roger watches. Roger realizes Uncle Frank is watching too. Roger goes to the door to try to figure out who is giving the maid all this excitement. Ursula walks by and caresses Roger's freshly spanked bottom. She says she can put some cream on it if he wants. He says it's fine. Roger asks if she knows who's on the other side of the door. She doesn't know who it is. She leaves, so Roger heads up to the attic to investigate. Uncle Frank was upstairs using a telescope looking sus, so his uncle hurries away. Roger looks through his telescope and sees naked people tumbling on the lawn. Uncle Frank finds him looking through his telescope. Before Roger leaves, he wonders if Frank also had to repress his desires when he was young. Frank responds that he does that now. Roger hears his parents on the other side of the door, so he tries to take a peek. Roland interrupts him and blackmails him to clean his car, since Roger shouldn't be listening in on other people's conversations. Roger gets revenge by placing a bucket of water for Roland to trip on. The next day in the chicken coop, Roger grabs the ancient version of P-Hub. As he's giving himself the 5-finger excitement, the farmhand walks in. Helene comes over to flirt with the farmhand. The farmhand traps her into a contraption and goes from behind. Roger thinks Helen needs help, so he tries to, but she refuses as she's enjoying the rooster. Roger steps outside the chicken coop and finally realizes what was happening. Roger comes back with Roland's boots that he was supposed to clean. He trades one of Elisa's books with his P-Hub version. Roland is mad his boots aren't clean, so he tells Roger's mom that Roger was listening to his parents' conversation last night. His mother is upset. Elisa picks up the ancient P-Hub and is really intrigued. Roger smiles when he notices this. During some alone time, Elisa reads the book and loves it when it starts talking about tossing salad. Roger is excitable as ever. He sneaks into the kitchen to grasp Ursula from behind, but she gets startled and smacks him with a plate. She pats his head as his eyes are at eye level with her mountains. She presses it against his face, but a large woman interrupts them. Roger wants to lose his V-card today, so in his desperate attempt, he follows Mrs. Muller. Mrs. Muller tries to get Gustavo to meet her somewhere so they can do it. But instead, Roger comes up from behind her and starts doing Gustavo's job. Mrs. Muller says no, but she's definitely wanted it as she pulls her skirt up. They're interrupted by the news that Germany has declared war on France, and Roger is super disappointed by the interruption. On the other hand, Roger's father is celebrating that war has started and his business can start booming. Roland and Elisa say their goodbyes as Roland leaves for war. Many of the men leave for war, but Roger stays, who is too young to fight. Roger thinks this is his prime time to lose his V-card. Ursula asks for help as she brings a mattress upstairs. Roger steals a kiss on the neck from her. Then he tries to grab her mountains. Ursula and Roger undress. Ursula gets a big surprise and she likes it. After they commit the act, Roger claims to love her already. Roger's mom and the priest have a conversation about how she is having issues with her husband's fantasies. She says he makes him look a certain way, and it doesn't really make her feel comfortable. Roger and Bertha are heard laughing as they listen in. His mom is visibly upset with him. Roger rebels for the first time against his mom. Later, Roger swims to a beautiful woman brushing her hair. She's heard good things about Roger. Roger stands up to show her, and the woman is pleasantly surprised. Roger goes under her skirt, and he probably gives her raspberry kisses. Roger's father arrives, and he hopes the war will last longer. Roger is curious about the reason for the war. His father says to blame the Germans. In the hallway, 2 women spy on Roger's parents. Roger decides to just go in to see what's going on. Roger's dad's kink is pretending his wife is the enemy, and they're going to kill her. Roger is caught, so he hurries out. Just outside, the 2 women have a very intimate moment. Marguerite goes to her bedroom to find Roger there wanting a kiss. Marguerite gives him a peck, but he wants more. She refuses. Uncle Frank is on the other side of the door, and he starts reciting a poem to profess his love for Marguerite. Roger tells Marguerite that he's always adored her when he was young, and now he wants to deflower her. He says all this while Uncle Frank is still reciting his poem. Poor guy. Roger turns Mother Mary around while Marguerite goes down. Uncle Frank hears some moaning. Later, Roger catches Uncle Frank looking at a prehistoric Netflix box. Roger looks at it too, then tells Uncle Frank to just sleep with women instead of looking at the box for pleasure. He admits it's a lot harder for him than Roger. Helen is at it again in the hallway, but this time it's Roger's turn. Roger is wondering who has been the man behind the door. Helen doesn't really know herself, but she believes it to be Mr. Muller. As Helen is about to leave, Roger grabs her from behind and starts pushing up against her. Her tea is jiggling about. Bertha wonders if her brother did it with Kate, Ursula, etc. Roger says he did it with almost every woman on the property. Elisa goes to the horse stables, and Roger follows her. He manages to seduce his own sister. They do it while Mrs. Muller is tending to the horses nearby. Bertha gains wind that his own siblings did it with each other, and she has a chuckle. By nightfall, 2 girls are sleeping with him. Then another enters his room later. Eventually, Kate, Marguerite, and Ursula are all in bed together. Much later, Elisa tells Roger that she thinks she's pregnant. Just in time, Roland's aircraft flies onto the property. Everyone goes to greet the war hero who kisses Elisa. More men return from war. Many of them are disabled or have lost an eye. Even Mr. Muller has died. Later that night, Ursula tells Roger that she's pregnant, and he must marry her. He suggests he should marry one of the crippled men. Then Aunt Marguerite comes in and tells him that she's pregnant too. In order to dodge another scandal, he tells her to marry Uncle Frank. Roger and Ursula bring nail polish to Elisa's room. They start to spread it on her bed to fake a period. Elisa is furious. Roger tells his sister to go over to Roland's room to sleep with him now before it's too late. Then he brings his aunt to Uncle Frank's room. Talk about dogging all responsibility. He clearly didn't want to pay for child support. Meanwhile, Elisa and Roland make it back to her room to do the dirty. The next day, Elisa and Roland get married. Ursula marries her new partner. Marguerite and Uncle Frank marry as well. Once they're showing, the women all share that they're going to name their children Roger after their real father. It seems that Roger has always felt very strongly for Ursula. He wanted to marry her, but she didn't want to marry him. As Roger is about to leave to live in the city, he finds out that Helene is pregnant too. He didn't waste any time. As he's about to leave, his mom tells him that there are many temptations in the city and he should be careful. Roger looks mischievously happy. All the women wave goodbye to Roger. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like. It really helps the channel.